Good day everyone. For today's video, I will discuss all about the Bates of literary movement. The Beat movement was considered response to World War II. People rejected the freewheeling American middle class values and materialism of modern society, throwing out the old roles of literature, music, taboos, and religion. Originally, an individuality came with uniform style of city dress, manners, and hip vocabulary, borrowed from jazz musician with no perfection of style. The most influential members of Beat Generation, Allen Ginsberg, was an American poet and writer, student at Columbia University in the 1940s. The famous poem of Allen Ginsberg is Howl and Kaddish. Next, Jacques Kerouac was an American novelist and poet of French-Canadian ancestry on 1950s. The best-known novel is On the Road. Next, William Seward Burroughs II was an American writer and visual artist. He have 18 novels, 6 collections of short stories, 4 collections of essays. Famously book, the title is Nick Lunch. The characteristic of Beat movement, Beat refer to pure and beautiful or exhausted and trodden down. The original coinage of Beat was meant to imply the people beaten down and walked over. They advocate personal release, purification, and illumination through drugs, jazz, or the disciplines of Zen Buddhism. Politics also factored into much Beat poetry. Literature became more bold, straightforward, and expressive than anything before. This sought to bring poetry back to the streets, to the people. The verse was frequently free, chaotic, and unstructured, liberally sprinkled with obscenities in a spontaneous, creative style. The key poet of Beat movement, the primary focus of these poets were on specific issues of contemporary social and political interest. Allen Ginsberg, Howl on 1956, Gary Sender, Rip Rap on 1959, Gregory Corso, Bump in 1958, Lawrence Ferlinghetti, I Am Waiting. Gary Sender, known as a poet, essayist, lecturer, winner of a Pulitzer Prize for Poetry and the American Book Award. Gregory Nuncio Corso was an American poet, a key member of the Beat movement. He was the youngest of the inner circle of Beat Generation writers. Lawrence Monsanto Ferlinghetti was an American poet, painter, social activist, and co-founder of City Lights booksellers and publishers. Okay, let's go to the influence on the Beat generation. The Beat were closely connected with poets of the San Francisco Renaissance movement, such as Kenneth Rexroth and Robert Duncan. When we say San Francisco Renaissance movement, the name given to the emergence of writers and artists in the Bay Area at the end of the World War II. Next, they were also influenced by jazz music, which was still seen as somewhat atrocious. When we see jazz music, is a genre that originated in the African American communities. Next, the Buddhism particularly was significant to many of the Beat poets and it figured into much of their works. So Buddhism is one of the world's largest religions and originated in 2,500 years ago in India. Okay, I want to introduce the famous authors of confessional poem. Anne Sexton, on 1928 to 1967, was born on November 9, 1928 in Newton, Massachusetts. Was an American poet known for his highly personal confessional verse. She was died on October 4, 1974 at the age of 45 in Weston, Massachusetts in United States. The notable works of Anne Sexton is Live or Die to Vidlam and Part Way Back. So Anne Sexton began writing poetry as a result of an emotional breakdown that to lead to serious depression. Suicide attempts was an overdose of Nimbutal. So mo to hinungdan sa iyahang pagkamatay. Next is John Berryman. In 1914-1972, born as John Smith, was born on October 25, 1914 in McAllister, Oklahoma, was an American poet and scholar. Was elected a Fellow of the Academy of American Poets in 1966 and served as a Chancellor from 1968 until his death. His best known work is the Dream Songs. So John Berryman suicide by jumping of the Washington Avenue Bridge between St. Paul and Minneapolis, and it was the second time that he had resolved to kill himself. Sylvia Plath was born on October 27, 1932 at Jamaica Plain, Boston, Massachusetts, United States. She was died on February 11, 1963, Primrose Hill, London, United Kingdom. Daddy is the most famous poem of Sylvia Plath, but she has 10 poems. Sylvia Plath was an American poet, novelist, and short story writer. Next is Robert Lowell in 1917 to 1977. He was born on March 1, 1917, Boston, Massachusetts, United States. He was died on September 12, 1977, New York, United States. He is best known for his volume Light Studies on 1959. Robert Lowell as a teacher, poet, translator, and playwright. He was died from a heart attack in a taxi cab at the age of 60.